Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again with another, of course, part two of our Pan African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're going to be, of course, discussing and honoring the life, legacy, and legacy of Celia Jane Allen. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well for future videos. As you all know, this is once again a dual stream with the Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African centered news and information. So, if you're watching on either platform, make sure that you hit the subscribe and like button. Once again, this is our Pan African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, Part 2, in which we're going to be honoring the life, legacy, and the work of Celia Jane Allen. If you do not know who Celia Jane Allen is, put a one in the chat. If you're unaware with the life, legacy, and work of Celia Jane Allen, put a two in the chat. If you are not aware, put a one in the chat if you are aware. Part of what we want to do, of course, with what we believe is an unprecedented series on Pan African leadership, is provide people with information about some little known Pan Africans. We know there are some well known Pan Africanists, such as the Kwame Nkrumahs. We talk about the Amy Garveys, but also we want to make sure that we provide information on, of course, Pan Africanists who may not be as well known. So once again, family, this is a dual stream once again with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and of course the home of African Center News and Information, and of course LumumbaSpeaks.com, the Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe that we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. And this is part two of our Pan African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're going to be looking to honor the life and the legacy and work of Celia Jane Allen. So we're going to get started, family. Appreciate you all tapping in. Mr. Sandman says, two, not much information about her in the Google search engine. So yes, we're going to get to that as well, about where you can learn more information about Celia Jane Allen. Appreciate you, Brother Sandman, for always being a supporter. So as you know, family, some of the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network, diversity of thought is welcome, irrespective if you're on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the center. You could be a integrationist, you could be a Pan-Africanist, and of course, you could even be a Black conservative. Your thoughts are welcome here. Of course, no racial epithets of any kind, no epithets of any kind. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in the three N's of Black power, that being, of course, self-respect, self-defense, and last but not least, self-determination. So this is a space where we respect ourselves as African people. Number three, as you all know, facts over feelings. We want to make sure that we attack the argument, but not the person. So no ad hominems. We want to attack the argument, not the person. If you disagree with someone, we were having, of course, an intellectually stimulating conversation. And then last but not least, family, no fundamentally false statements. Of course, as you know, this is my platform, and I'm responsible for the information that is disseminated on my platform. And so we definitely don't want to hurt my credibility. And so if you make a claim that is patently false, I will have to interject. A great example I always provide is the great debate between, of course, Michael Jordan and, of course, LeBron James. Right? One may believe that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player to ever step on the court. However, if you were to make the claim that LeBron James is the greatest player because Michael Jordan only won 2 championships, that would be a patently false statement, and I would have to interject. And of course, last but not least, family, our mission here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to simply challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So once again, family, our goal is not to exonerate or vilify, but to simply challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So once again, family, this is our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, Part 2, right, in which we're going to be honoring the life and legacy of Celia Jane Allen. This leadership series, we're using this leadership series to honor leaders of the past in order to make a better world for African people in the future. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the lives, legacies, and the work of great Pan-Africanists, and looking at extrapolating what did they do that we could utilize to make the world better for African people today. And up next in the family, we're going in alphabetical order. So trust me, if we haven't gotten to, of course, our favorite Pan-Africanist or yours, a Pan-African that you believe is prominent or needs to have that light shed on their life, legacy, and work, trust me, we will get to them. We're going in alphabetical order. It's Celia Jane Allen. Many of you may be unaware of Celia Jane Allen. If you want to actually become aware of her, a great piece of literature to learn more about Celia Jane Allen and several Black women who, of course, were sisters in the struggle is the book here by Dr. Keisha Blaine, Set the World on Fire, Black Nationalist Women in the Global Struggle for Freedom, right? So once again, if you want to take a look at the book, family, Set the World on Fire, Black Nationalist Women in the Global Struggle for Freedom, and we would touch a little bit more on her text. I actually reached out to Dr. Blaine a couple months ago, hoping I could get her on the platform to interview, but of course she said that she was extremely busy. When she wrote this book, she was a professor of African American history at University of Pittsburgh. She's now a professor of African American history at Brown University. So of course she was able to find a better position for her to further her career. And I think part of that is because she wrote an absolutely brilliant text. So we want to give a shout out to her in terms of doing the research and studying on sisters in the struggle. So we definitely want to make sure we respect her there. But for those of you who are not in the know, Celia Jane Allen was born in Mississippi. She came to Chicago during the Great Migration, right? And she was an organizer and recruiter for the Peace Movement Ethiopia, which was founded by Midi Mard Gordon. Many may be unaware, but the Peace Movement Ethiopia was a prominent Pan-Africanist organization in Chicago, Illinois, during the 1930s and 40s. Some estimates argue that they had a membership of about 300,000. And it promoted primarily not only Pan-Africanism, as many of the members of the Peace Movement Ethiopia were, of course, members of the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, which we know was created by Marcus Garvey and Amy Ashwood Garvey, August 1st, 1914 in Kingston, Jamaica. And we know one of the prominent causes of pushes or aims of the UNINA, ACLU, African Communities League, was repatriation of African people to the African continent. And so the Peace Movement Ethiopia, which was founded by Midi Mard Gordon, who was a member of the UNIA, continued to carry on that impetus, that push, that drive to repatriate to Africa. They were active once again in the 1930s and 40s, and they particularly were looking to repatriate to Liberia. Part of the goal of the organization was to gain federal funding to repatriate, right? And so part of that, they worked with white nationalists, particularly Senators James Strom Thurmond, and of course the Mississippi Senator Theodore G. Bilbo. So these were avowed white nationalists, right? They were very open with their white nationalism, but they were able to work with, of course, these white nationalist senators because we know these white nationalist senators believe in racial separation, and they wanted to, of course, rid the United States of African Americans, and African Americans wanted to, flee America. And so as a result, they were able to do what they could, right, and to try to have a bill passed on, of course, the Senate floor that would provide federal funding for African Americans to repatriate to Africa. Celia Jane Allen, of course, was a member of the Peace Movement Ethiopia, and she was one of the primary recruiters and organizers of the organization, right, in terms of getting people to come in and, of course, provide not only funding for the organization, but also trying to garner community support to repatriate through the peace movement of Ethiopia. So, family, not a lot of information on Celia Jane Allen. Of course, Sister Blaine in her text, Set the World on Fire, talks a little bit. She talks about her organizing efforts, right? Particularly, she was tasked with organizing the southeastern United States. Many argue, Blaine argues in her text, Dr. Blaine, that this was done because she was from the South and was familiar with the area, the local politics, so on and so forth. Even though that work was extremely dangerous, part of the work that the Peace Movement Ethiopia did was also advocating against lynching, right? Particularly in the state of Mississippi, which is where Sister Allen was from. But As I said before, the primary goal of the peace movement in Ethiopia was to repatriate the African, particularly the nation state of Liberia. And of course, many would argue that the peace movement in Ethiopia was a derivative of course, Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. So I think it's important that we always, of course, honor the sisters in the struggle. We know when we discuss the history of Pan Africanism, that we've always seen sisters being part of the struggle, right? They weren't given second class status in the movement. And of course, that's something that we covered before when we did a great video with, of course, Brother Dwayne Omawale, who is the resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks and Be Quiet Network. And we talked about the history of Pan Africanism. We actually did a show titled Is Pan Africanism Sexist, right? And of course, the argument was made that if anyone is familiar with the movement, you would know that that is not the case. Oftentimes, unfortunately, due to intellectual subterfuge, particularly in the ranks of the academy, we find many feminists seeking to play a sleight of hand where they're claiming that individuals or organizations that weren't Pan-Africanists were actually Pan-Africanists engaged in sexist type activities and actions. Even though these organizations and movements, and oftentimes individuals did have a sexist lens, they weren't Pan-Africanists. So that's just something that we definitely want to make sure that we clear up. But once again, family, Celia Jane Allen, born in Mississippi, migrated, of course, to Chicago during the Great Migration, became an organizer and recruiter for the peace movement Ethiopia. Put a 1 in the chat if you're familiar with the peace movement Ethiopia. Put a 2 in the chat if you're unfamiliar with the peace movement Ethiopia. As I said before, the peace movement Ethiopia was founded by Midi Martha Gordon, a former member of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. And the primary goal was advocating, organizing, and seeking federal funding for African Americans to repatriate to the African continent, especially in Liberia. They sought to work with white nationalists, Senator Strom Thurmond, and even Senator Theodore Bilbo to gain federal funding. Senator Bilbo actually did, I believe, if I remember correctly, write legislation and support wrote a bill seeking to have it passed in the Senate floor to provide federal funding for African Americans to repatriate. Of course, the bill had very little support and died on the House floor. But we see the kinds of ends that African Americans went to try to leave America. So, family, I'm going to put the link in the chat. The link is in the description. I'm going to put the link in the chat. So LMA says too, and I figured that a lot of people may have not been aware, of course, of Celia Jane Allen or the Peace Movement Ethiopia. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're able to honor the life, legacy, and work of great Pan-Africanists, but also look at what they did and if we could use their actions, their initiatives to make a better world for African people today. And so the question we're going to be asking is, should repatriation still be on the table? And should we be willing to work with individuals whose political views are antithetical to our being, right? If it helps us accomplish a particular goal. So that's the question that we have, family. Should repatriation be on the table? And should we be looking to work with individuals whose political views are antithetical to our mere existence? So that is the question for today in terms of this leadership series of Celia Jane Allen, of course, who was a recruiter and organizer for the Peace Movement Ethiopia. So the link is in the description, family. The link is in the chat. Tap in and be part of the conversation. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com and Be Quiet Network here on YouTube. Our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, Part 2, in which we honor the life, legacy, and work of Celia Jane Allen. And of course, I would argue, of course, from the literature that I've read by Dr. Blaine, these brothers and sisters who are members of the Peace Movement Ethiopia, they were committed to the core to better the lives of African people, not only here in the United States, but around the world. And they were committed 100% to seek federal funding to repatriate to the African continent. So, like I stated, Blaine argues that they had over 300,000 members just in Chicago alone. I believe it was Chicago, it may be nationwide. But I think it also shows that the significance, right? And of course, when the Peace Movement Ethiopia began to dissolve, disintegrate, particularly after they failed to get federal funding. Many members of the organization joined the Nation of Islam. So we see once again this connection, right, from Garvey, go from the UNIA to the PME, Peace Movement Ethiopia, then from the PME to, of course, the NOI, the Nation of Islam, right? So we see this connection, irrespective of what organization someone was in, that we find going back to Marcus Garvey, who is considered one of the greatest Pan-Africanists, if not the greatest Pan-Africanist of the modern era. So once again, family, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. This is part 2 of our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, in which we're honoring the life, legacy, and work of Celia Jane Allen, a sister who was a member of the Peace Movement Ethiopia and who was an organizer and recruiter for the organization. The link's in the description, link is in the chat. And the question we're asking in terms of us extrapolating from the work of not only the Peace Movement Ethiopia, but Celia Jane Allen is, should repatriation to the African continent still be on the table for African people, particularly African people here in the West? And then second, should we be willing to work with individuals or entities whose political views are antithetical to our mere existence? So that's the question, family. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Brother LMA, what's the word?
Hey, what's going on, Lumumba? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine, brother.
Yeah, Doc. So when you say repatriate, are you meaning like being an expat, like actually live on the, live in a country in Africa? Is that what you mean by?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As for Black Americans, I would have to say I'm not against it, but I think that for Black Americans, our priority should be to fight here, to live here, and now I'm not saying don't vacation. I'm not saying don't be friends with folks from the continent. I've always said we should have outposts. We should have outposts everywhere. So I mean, I guess, well, put it this way, maybe a small amount of folks that ain't really doing much here. But I think our bigger fight will be here, and then, like I said, we can have like a little small outpost, somewhere in the continent. I was having a conversation, I think it was last week. I was talking with a brother from Ethiopia, and I guess because I guess the Ethiopians and like Jamaicans have like a relatively friendly relationship, and he was saying that just like a Jamaican town, some sort in Ethiopia,
Right, where Haile Selassie set aside land in Ethiopia for Rastafarians. So it isn't just Jamaicans. There are a number of people, individuals, of brothers and sisters of African descent who have repatriated to Ethiopia.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I guess for me, I feel like our major fight is here, and I feel like we can do.
So let me ask you this question.
We can do more here than we can over there.
What is the fight? And what is it that you believe that we're able to do here that we wouldn't be able to do on the African continent? Because many have argued, particularly Marcus Garvey, that, and even Malcolm X, for example, that the reason why African people globally are disrespected is because Africa is not strong and united.
That's fair. Like I said, I'm not against working with Africans. You know what I'm saying, or with with whatever Africans that are willing to work with us, of course, because I got to realize I can't, Africa's not a monolith, and there's some Africans over there that just can't stand us, and so we got to work with whoever's willing to work with us. Repeat your question again.
Yeah, so you said you believe we would be able to accomplish more here rather than over there, and you stated that you believe our primary fight is here, and I just want to know if you can unpack why you.
Okay. For one, I mean, like I said, culturally, we are, for better or worse, we are Americans. We speak the language, we know the customs. We wouldn't be starting from scratch, in a sense. And I'm not saying like every single Black American, African American has to move to some country in Africa. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you're saying that. But if you're talking about like maybe a handful of people, but they're operating as an outpost to Black Americans here, where there's like actual, goods and services and political.
Real quick, brother LMA, I don't know if you are aware, but here we use the term African Americans.
Okay.
Okay.
Right,
go ahead.
Yeah, but if if there's like, political favors going back and forth, where there's, I'm scratching your back and you're scratching mine. Um, I feel that that's cool, but I think that, like I said, here, we already know the culture. America is the, biggest superpower. As of right now, they're the top economy. If we got our act together and started working together here, and then as a political unit here, we want to branch out and um, work with other folks. I'm all down for that, but I think that primarily we should focus on. Um, I mean, and it's a big ask. I mean, and I'm not saying that it's going to be easy here, but I feel like since we are part of the culture, we know the culture. Um, we do have, it's, even though it's not much. I mean, we do have um, a lot of black folks that do have um, roots here. I just feel that we should stay here, fight here, and branch out, but not like put all of our eggs in the in moving on. I mean, okay, when you say uh, uh, move back to when you say move back to Africa, how many as a percentage of the population are you talking?
It could be any percentage. I'm not putting a number on it.
Okay, yeah.
All I'm
I mean,
asking is, should that be on the table?
well, for me, I'm always anything should be on the table, whether or not we take it as, 'cause like I said, things can get, because like even with Africa, I mean, they're talking about Africa in the next century is going to be number one, or because like, well, not number one, excuse me, the land is going to be the real estate, the geography is going to be number one. I can't say that unfortunately, I can't say that the people there will be number one. I mean, they're getting um, investment from China, investment from Russia. South Africa is part of the BRICS nation, so they have the the runway. Now the only question is, will they be able to capitalize on that? I mean, like I said, they still have their neo-colonial oppressors from Europe still got their tentacles all in the mix, and Africa still has their own internal issues. Um, so I don't know if adding us to the mix will be able to, you know, make it better. But like I said, I think our biggest, our fight is here. And like I said, once we get it, situated here to the point where we're stable here, then I think we can um, talk about
So
expect.
let me ask you
Go
this:
ahead.
what does stability look like here to you,
Whew,
for
that's a good one.
African Americans?
Yeah, that's a good one. Not a projected 0% $0 wealth in 2050. Um, but I guess having, how can I say it? Uh, like I said, just economic, political stability. So we're not, we're not on the bottom of the total pole. Um, our crime rates are low. Our us having, what was called what's what I'm looking for? Our income and wealth is high, so the point we don't have to worry about being out on the street. I'm trying to think all the words. I'm trying to trying to organize my thoughts. But I mean, along those lines.
And
Uh,
so, and the reason
yeah,
why
yeah.
I'm asking that question is you talk about stability, and I remember Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, uh, and he was, of course, the prominent Pan Africanist here in America prior to Marcus Garvey's arrival. He actually transitioned the same year as Booker T. Washington. But he made the
Mhm.
argument that black people in America have as much chance of being a man as a frog has of living in a snake pit.
Mhm. I mean, that's fair. I mean, I can't really argue with that. But
He's like,
um, I mean, I mean, I can't argue it. But I'm just saying that the sentiments, I definitely feel their sentiments. But I think that you know, depending, even I don't know. I just feel like this is our we know the culture here. We wouldn't have to start from scratch. And like I said,
well,
in a lot of places.
let me ask you
Go
this:
ahead.
have you been to the continent?
I have not. I was
Okay, so
planning a trip right before COVID, and that kind of
yeah,
sidetracked all of that.
I've been, and I would make the
Hmm.
argument, due to being there, you wouldn't be starting from scratch. And the reason why I say that, not only just from my own personal experience, which is anecdotal, but also we know there are numerous forms of African cultural retention that we practice here as African Americans here in the United States. So I would make the argument that it would not be you wouldn't be starting over.
Right. But okay. Fair enough. But um, I guess from an infrastructure standpoint, like I said, I have not been to the continent. I know they got some spots that are, more developed than others, and obviously we probably live in those spots. I don't know. I guess for me, moving to, and like I said, it's just apprehension. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against vacationing or visiting, but for me to like set up shop over there, unless it gets like just super bad over here, because I would say unless it gets super bad over here, but if it gets super bad over here, um, I don't know where else we're going to be able to go because unless there's a country in Africa that has a air force and a navy that can, what I'm saying, hold its own against, China, Europe, and America, you know, unless you got something like that, you're not going to be able to. How can I put this? Be a man in Africa the way you think you're going to be a man here in America.
So when you say be a man, what do you mean by that?
In the same sense that you mentioned it in the with the frog analogy.
Okay, in terms of being
Yeah,
able to live your life
yeah,
uninvaded of
yeah,
foreign domination.
exactly. Yeah, because
Okay,
like I said, I mean, there's no country in Africa that has a military force that can take on the incursions of China, America, in Europe. So I mean, it kind of sucks, but it same with South Africa. I mean, South America as well. So if you think you're gonna run over there and think that you're not gonna run into the same issues here, I mean, you know,
okay. But Mr. Sandman,
Hey, what's the word? How you doing?
I'm doing quite all right. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, my definition of a man is someone that contributes to society and adds value to society. You know, just being worth something. You know,
Mhm.
so my biggest worry would be if I was to go there. Me personally, if I was to go there, I wouldn't want to be just some guy wandering around aimlessly with nothing to do. I would want to be able to contribute to society and bring something positive there. So at the present time, I don't know what I'll be able to provide to any particular nation in West Africa or any other part of Africa. That's something that I would have to look into. But yeah, just my acts. That's what defines a man. What you do in this world. So yeah, I would have to have something to do that I'm contributing. And about
Okay,
the Celia lady, I was doing a little bit of research on her, trying to find something. But yeah, like you were saying, that if you want in-depth understanding of what she does, you will have to purchase that book. But from what I understand, it looked like she was working with Mr. Marcus Garvey on working with the federal government or to helping African Americans repatriate back to the United States.
well, yeah, but
And then
she wasn't working with Garvey. She was. This is because Garvey had been deported by that time. This was in the 30s and 40s, and of course, the peace movement Ethiopia was a outgrowth or a derivative of the UNIA in the 1930s and 40s in Chicago. And Mitty Maud Gordon was the founder of the peace movement Ethiopia, and Miss Gordon was a member of the UNIA.
okay, so she was a part of the movement to the Ethiopia, you say?
Well, so Peace Movement Ethiopia, that was the name of the organization, but their goal was to repatriate to Africa, particularly Liberia.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, that sparked my interest because I feel that, that's one way that women, black women in particular, add to society for, African Americans or even Africans in the diaspora around the world is, they tend to be better communicators than men. And when it comes to negotiations and talking with people, they tend to do a better job at negotiating sometimes. So
Can you substantiate that claim?
I can't substantiate it, but it's just a gut feeling that I have that, women just are they just known for communication. Not just black women, but all women in general. They like to talk. And
Well,
anytime that you,
liking to talk doesn't mean that you're a good communicator.
not
I've been
necessarily,
around a lot of people who say a whole lot without saying anything.
yeah, that's true. But then there's people that come into an environment and don't speak to anyone. And when you don't speak to anyone, you can't really create alliances with other people by if you like the old saying, a closed mouth don't get fed.
Mhm.
So just the small thing of saying hello and keeping in touch with people goes a long way. With building camaraderie with other groups and building that trust. Because they'll even say that best business tactic to make when you're negotiating with a new company or a new business partner is to take them to dinner and just talk and don't even talk about business. Get to know the person. Just small things like that creates trust in between people, and it makes it easier to work together. So I think that's a contribution that I believe that women tend to be more naturally in depth at doing than men in general. Just communication. So it's great to utilize women in that fashion. Um, but behind the scenes, I think men are good with the logistics and just getting things in motion. Yeah, but when it comes to communication with the public, women tend to be a little bit better at that. Um, yeah, but as for me,
I would say I don't think you could put a gender on that. I think it comes down to each individual person.
yeah, that's
I
true.
know women who are good communicators. I know women who are horrible communicators.
Yeah, that's true.
I know women who will walk into a room and won't say a word to anyone, and I know men such as myself who have an extremely gregarious personality and are personable with everyone.
Right, that's true. That's true. But
But let
I
me get to this comment by Snapshot Reviews, and hopefully SSR you could tap in and be part of the conversation. You state that to answer the second part of your question, I think working with folks who are in opposition is ultimately pointless because it does not produce anything. All right, so appreciate that. And of course, the first part of the question is: should African people in the diaspora repatriate to Africa? Should this be a goal of African people here in the West? So that's what we're taking from, because once again, as I stated, family, part of the goal of having this Pan-African Leadership Series is to honor leaders of the past in order to make a better world for African people today. And so in doing so, we want to not only review the life, legacy, and work of great Pan-Africans, but also extrapolate from their work and argue what they advocated for or what they were working to do. Can we use these concepts and ideas today?
for repatriating,
Yes.
yeah, I believe that, like I said before, me personally, I feel that if my repatriation would have to be in line with what would be my duties to contribute to the nation or to Africa in general. So I would need a team to work with to feel comfortable repatriating. But it's a long term endeavor. You can't just look at it as, okay, we're going to go over there and in the next 6 months, everything's going to be hunky dory. No, this is something that you're starting, and your children's children might be the ones that benefit the most from your repatriation back to Africa, as long as whatever you instilled in the environment that you build there when you repatriate is something that could get passed down from generation to generation, and it's a sound foundation that won't be disturbed too much. So yeah, so eh, it's always good to have real estate property. So if you can go out there and purchase some property, and as the market value or the real estate in Africa starts to grow, then that'll be something of value. that you could pass down to your children and your grandchildren. So that's a good investment, along with other investments that you would have here in the United States. But yeah, like LMA was saying, that the United States is still the world superpower when it comes to financial wealth. So if you can take some of the American wealth or some of the American dollar and transition it over to some of the African dollar, you could probably, you know, purchase a lot of stuff in there. And if you can keep that property, then that's something that you can pass down that could be valuable. But one concern about that is I believe in African culture. They don't believe in you owning any particular thing or one individual owning any particular thing.
Well, you
They
you,
believe
you
in,
have you have you have that type of ownership now.
oh, they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's important. If you believe in repatriating and sustaining your the stuff that you purchase so that it sustains its value, because I heard that in the past that Africans believe that nothing is anyone's property, that is all
No,
for
you,
one.
you you have individual ownership now.
Yeah, individual ownership shit. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, so yeah, like I said, it's something that we wouldn't be doing for ourselves in particular. It's something that we would be passed down from generation to generation. So you can't just think about yourselves as we go there. We have to think about what we're doing for our kids and our kids.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So, second part of the question: should African people work with individuals or entities that hold views antithetical to our existence?
Antithetical to our existence. Antithetical, that means in contrary to our existence, or that's in negative.
Antithetical, meaning these are individuals who if they had it their way, we wouldn't exist.
Okay. Whole views. I mean, I guess that's a matter of opinion.
Well, for example, if the person is an avowed white nationalist, that is someone who holds views that are antithetical to our existence.
What is the view of a white nationalist?
A view of a white nationalist, part of that view is that African people are a bane to society and human civilization.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't know if all white nationalists believe that. I think some white nationalists believe in just a separation of races, but I don't know if they believe that it's necessary for them to feel the need to wipe the African race off the planet
Well,
Earth.
yeah, because one actual core tenet of white nationalism is the belief that white people aren't in the preeminent position or pole position in America anymore. This is either real or even perceived pole position due to the advances, social, politically, economically, of people of color. And that part of that, in order for white people to return either psychologically or real truth or physically to a pole position in American society, they have to engage in a level of omnipresent retrenchment.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're a black person and the people you align with don't want you around or are antithetical to your existence, then obviously, you that person will be a fool to align themselves with a group of people like that. They would be, you know, um, pulling the switch on their own electric chair.
Okay.
That wouldn't make any sense for them to do
Well,
that.
and the reason why I asked that question because part of the work that the peace movement in Ethiopia did was they actually engaged white nationalist senators, Strom Thurmond, and of course Theodore Bebo, and requesting that they would, of course, author a bill to try to have it passed through the Senate that would provide funding for African Americans to repatriate to Africa.
Oh well, yeah, that's a different stance then, because if we both, it works for you and it works for us. We both it's a positive on both ends. Like, so the white nationalists would get rid of the African from their area, and they're segregationists. It's not that much different than what Abraham Lincoln believed in. He believed that it's wrong, for the United States to enslave Africans, but he didn't believe that we should integrate.
No,
You know,
no, he didn't have an issue. He did not have a moral objection to slavery. He didn't
yeah,
care. He didn't care one way or the other about the enslavement of African people.
yeah, but he didn't care about African people, but he cared about his nation, and he knew that having slavery in his nation was a negative for the nation in general. You know, because it was already outlawed, you know, in Europe. So
Well, no, no, but that wasn't the issue. It wasn't an issue of he thought it was a negative. He said it himself. He didn't care. He didn't care if one way or the other. All he cared about was winning the war and preserving the union.
yeah, but there was a lot of Christians who uh, who protest who protested against slavery in the United States. They thought it was wrong.
Well,
So
abolitionists, particularly
yeah,
slavery.
abolitionists.
But the issue, and the reason I'm bringing this up because I actually covered this when I was teaching African American history, was he stated in his inauguration address. So when he was inaugurated, you give a speech, and he stated there that he had no plan or goal of abolishing slavery. And this is what, January of what, 61? Yeah.
What was his exact words in the speech?
I can grab. Matter of fact, I could pull up the PowerPoint. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Let me see. This probably would be like week 12, week 13. Let me see if I can pull it
Yeah,
up.
because from my understanding, the main reason why the Republicans and Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican, was against slavery is because they wanted to move towards uh, the Industrial Revolution. So you have all of these business owners in the South that are, you know,
Okay, here we go.
former
Yeah, I found it. I found it. So let me pull this up. Let's see here. So this, of course, was at his inauguration speech. Boom. And he states, this is his inaugural address, March 4th, 1861. I have no purpose directly or indirectly to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists. I believe I have no lawful right to do so, and I'm not inclined to do so. This is March 4th, 1861.
Yeah. Well, was Abraham Lincoln a lawyer?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. If he has no, yeah, he's restrained by the law.
But but
If no
but
law,
but the issue is, you said that he believed that morally he was opposed to it, and that wasn't the case. He didn't give a damn about slavery.
well, when I say morally, I don't think that it messed with his consciousness, but I believe that morally he believed that it was going to affect the overall development of the country because no country can really sustain over an extended period of time by with slavery like that.
Well,
It
I
just wouldn't
disagree
work.
because America had been sustaining itself for 244 years.
Yeah,
So,
but we are so say for instance if slavery never was abolished, right, and they still practice it here in the United States.
which they
Like,
do.
I mean, when you say when they arrest people,
Well, yeah, that the 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery. It simply stated that slavery was illegal unless used as punishment for a crime.
yeah. So all right, so say if the white people in the South were still allowed to have plantations
They were. It was called sharecropping.
and they were allowed to force Africans or black people to work on their plantations, and if they
They
were
did.
found walking, you know if they weren't freely allowed to migrate around those states,
Mhm.
um then where would the South be right now? It would have no growth. It would be
Well,
just
here's the thing,
a
everything you just
wasteland.
hold on. Everything you just said actually happened. They still have plantations. Black people still worked on those plantations, didn't make any money. It was called sharecropping. Black people still were prohibited from traveling and going from place to place. It was called black codes. All that stuff
But
still existed.
yeah, it was, yeah, you had but you could still leave if you wanted to.
No, actually,
I
no, you
couldn't.
couldn't because they actually made laws stating that if there was a law, one of the black codes, there was a law called a vagrancy law, to where if you were traveling and you could not prove that you worked for someone and that you were doing the business of the person who you were employed by, you were arrested and put on a chain gang and then forced to work for free for the state rather than a private business.
Okay, so what ended sharecropping in the South?
I'm sorry.
What ended sharecropping in the South?
I would argue in some, well, I would, you could make the argument sharecropping existed up until the civil rights movement.
All the way in the 60s, and that's
Yeah,
around the time that black people started a great migration to the north, right?
right. Because and mind you, during the Great Migrations, it was a crime if you were caught reading the Chicago. The Chicago Defender was one of the African American newspapers that advocated for African Americans to migrate to the north. If you were caught with that newspaper, you were thrown in jail. And
When
so,
did you?
literally, and real very quickly, W.E. Du Bois, Dr. W.E. Du Bois, the first African American to get a PhD from Harvard, of course, known for his seminal text, Souls of Black Folk. He actually repatriated to Ghana, actually visited his home, which is now a museum, the W.E. Du Bois Center for Pan Africanism in Accra. One of the things that he mentioned, and he talked about this rather eloquently in a paper that he wrote, was that African Americans had a day of jubilee. He's talking about, of course, Juneteenth, emancipation, and then they went right back into servitude. And by that, he was talking about sharecropping. So the economic system of the South didn't change. Like there still was enslavement. They just called it by a different name.
Yeah, well, you can argue that just working at Walmart is
No,
slavery.
no, no. We're talking about the people literally weren't getting paid. They had no rights, just like in slavery, and it was based on their race.
Right. So when did your family migrate to Ohio?
I don't know, but I do. I don't know. I know my grandmother came when she was a teenager from North Carolina. And then on my dad's side, I know my great grandparents were in Ohio. My great grandparents on my father's side. So I couldn't tell you exactly. I would argue maybe with my paternal grandfather, I think maybe his great grandparents came up from Georgia. So we're talking about maybe the late 1800s.
Oh, okay. So
But
that
even
was
that,
my
even
grandparents.
even that was a risk because there were laws made. Once again, we're talking about black codes in which, if black people were caught even walking or near a railroad track, they could be arrested. Like literally, because they realized black people were trying to get the French toast up out of there, so they were making all kind of laws to prevent people from even coming north.
Yeah. My grandparents migrated to Philadelphia and their siblings migrated to New York City in the 1940s. My great grandfather, not my great grandfather, my grandfather, he was in World War II. Then after he got out of World War II, he migrated to Philadelphia, where my grandmother was already there. She came up in the early 1940s, but she used to tell us stories how when she was a child, her mother or my great grandmother used to work on a plantation picking cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And she used to watch her. She used to be with my great grandmother as she picked cotton. So yeah,
And
it looks like we started migrating
go
around that
ahead.
time, around the 40s, 50s.
Okay.
And then that's when you start having a white flight, where a lot of these white people that were
Right.
coming out of the wars, Vietnam, the Korean War, and World War II, they were starting to get all kinds of loans from the government to leave the
Right.
inner cities and move into the suburbs. And
Right.
then us black people, we were left in the inner cities,
Right.
where and due to us living in the inner cities, the value of the property started to drop.
Right. So very quickly, this book here, Hattiesburg, an American City in Black and White, is written by Dr. William Stokely. I've actually had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Stokely. He actually received his PhD in African American history from the Ohio State University. I've actually read his book, and this book here gives a great example of not only the black codes during Jim and Jane Crow in the, of course, South. So the claims I were making I'm able to substantiate. And this is an example. This is a text that I've actually read. I have behind me here. Um, Matter of fact, I could pull it up right here. Right, so this is the book right here, family. Hattiesburg, A City in Black and White by Dr. William Stokely, that talks about the laws that were created, right, that prevented African Americans from actually being uh, citizens, right? We know the late great father of Black nationalism, um, father of Black nationalism, Martin Delany, argued that we actually are denizens and not citizens. But then his text really highlights the laws, the rapacious laws that were used to, of course, um, foster uh, black civil liberties in the South, particularly in the city of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So let me read this comment here. Let's see. I think a lot of people forgot that sorcery was a commercial business opened and operated by private citizens in their businesses. It was not really a government service through nations as a whole. I think you're maybe talking about slavery. I hope. I think you just talking about benefit from it at the detriment of Africans. The extra effed up thing is that it was enforced by law. If they prevented black folks from leaving the state, no way they were going to sign off on allowing black people to leave the country. This is why working with them was pointless. Yes. And so one of the issues that they found, and even Dr. Stokely talks about this in his book, of course, Hattiesburg, American City in Black and White, was that whites were, slavery, right, were opposed to black people migrating because they were losing their source of cheap labor. So that became an issue. They were losing their source of cheap labor. That's one of the reasons why they were opposed to African Americans actually leaving to the north, let alone repatriating to Africa. So that is a great point there, but a snapshot review. Great point, great point, great point. Absolutely. So yeah, and so even Michelle Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, and we know Michelle Alexander, a former law professor at the Ohio State University, her book, our seminal text that she wrote, I believe, 12, 14 years ago, The New Jim Crow, she talks about African Americans have been under a system of social control that started with chattel enslavement, moved to sharecropping, black codes, Jim Crow, and she argues now the new Jim Crow, right? And so the argument is that the primary thesis of her text is that the new Jim Crow is once you are labeled a felon, you can be legally discriminated against in the same manner that African Americans were legally discriminated against during the Jim and Jane Crow era. So that's just something to consider when we talk about, of course, this concept of a system of social control. And of course, America was able to develop, and part of the reason why America became an economic superpower was due to the enslavement of African Americans. We could particularly talk about many of the most prominent multinational corporations in this country that are headquartered in this country gained their capital due to the enslavement of African Americans. Even some of the preeminent, of course, colleges and universities in the United States of America, they are what they are due to, of course, their role in the transatlantic slave trade. And there's a great book that actually highlights this history, and it's Ebony and Ivory by Dr. Craig Stephen Wilder. Dr. Craig Stephen Wilder, of course, is a professor of American history at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And Ebony and Ivory, Race, Slavery, and the Troubled History of America's University. So when we talk about you can't develop a nation based on slavery, America would be an example. Haiti would be an example, which was, of course, the wealthiest colony in the Western world. And we can just look around and we find that, unfortunately, as Eric Williams talked about in his book, Capitalism and Slavery, African people were taken from their homes in Africa and sent to the West to toil for lashes and not wages, as he said, to build these, of course, cities, these golden cities, right, in the Western world. So, of course, we actually find that the basis of the Western world is built upon the enslavement of African people, in which we worked for lashes and not wages.
Yeah, so that's the definition of cattle slavery. Chattel slavery, we were considered cattle. We weren't
Right.
considered human beings,
Correct.
And if you had like a mule that was pulling your farm equipment, then that's practically what you consider. Hello, am I still there?
Yes, you're still here. Absolutely. So once again, family, if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. You're watching a dual stream here on YouTube, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always
Hello.
favoring Black. And of course, the Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. This is part 2 of our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're honoring the life, legacy, and work of Celia Jane Allen, a recruiter and organizer for the Peace Movement Ethiopia. The Peace Movement Ethiopia primary purpose was, of course, to repatriate African Americans to the African continent, particularly Liberia. So the question we're asking in terms of and us not only provide showing reverence, of course, for Pan-African leaders of the past, was should we still, what can we extract from their work to utilize today to make the world better for African people? So the question is, of course, should we work, of course, with individuals who have views that are antithetical to our existence, and should repatriation to the continent still be on the table? So once again, family, if you're watching, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. This is part 2 of our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're highlighting the life, legacy, and work of Celia Jane Allen. Go ahead, Mr. Sandman. And Snapshot Reviews, I hope you could tap in and be part of the convo.
Yes. Do you recall, like, do you know the story behind, like, reparations for enslaved people, enslaved Africans in the South? I did a little bit of research on it, and I believe on the NAACP's website, they have like a note or some type of PDF file stating why they're pursuing reparations for African Americans, and in their statement they say that something to the effect that after after the Civil War, one of the generals for the Union Army stated that the freed slaves in South Carolina and Georgia and Florida were going to be given their own land, and their own land will be protected by the Union military, and any white people that came on their land would be subject to criminal prosecution. But for whatever reason, whether it was Jim Crow, they took that right away from
Right, you're talking about 40 acres and a mule.
40 acres and a mule, right. So there was no actual litigation by, the federal government in the Senate or in the Congress to give black people 40 acres and a mule, but it was stated, in the actual memorandum by a high-ranking individual in the Union Army that we were supposed to have our own land. What do you think about that notion that how it was how our land was the rights to our land in the South was taken away from us?
Well, yeah, like I said, when you study Black history, what we find is that whenever there's real or even perceived racial progress, it's followed by periods of retrenchment. Doesn't surprise me at all.
So why do you think the Union military didn't enforce the law that the Union general laid down?
Part of that was the Compromise of 1877.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the 1877 compromise?
Yeah, the 1877 compromise was a compromise due to that led to Rutherford B. Hayes. So there was a dispute in an election, if I remember correctly. There was a tie, I believe, in the not the popular vote, but the electoral college vote. And what ended up taking place was the Republican and Democratic Party came to a compromise stating that we will allow a Republican to become president, Rutherford B. Hayes, who is from Ohio, if the Republicans agree to the Democratic demand to remove Union soldiers from the South. And this, of course, led to the end of Reconstruction, and of course, the genesis of the Nadir race relations, in which African people literally had no right, in which anti-Black racism in America reached its zenith, and Black people literally had no rights whatsoever.
Well, it looks like the South intimidated the North
Well, no,
into coming to the
no,
87
no. It
because
was
they
just it was
killed
actually an
they
agreement.
killed Abraham Lincoln. So who was the next president that they were going to assassinate if they kept Union soldiers in the South to protect us?
Well, no, it wasn't a situation in which they were intimidated. And I can say this because I've read up rather extensively on the compromise. Matter of fact, what's the brother's name? Rayford Logan, the Pan African historian. Of course, he wrote a book, The Betrayal of the Negro, right? Rutherford B. Hayes to Woodrow Wilson. He goes rather in depth about the um, the compromise of 1877. So it wasn't a situation in which, of course, they were intimidated by the South. But SSR, go right ahead.
Good evening, both. How you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Good evening. It's morning time over here.
Oh, is it?
Or
Yeah.
afternoon.
I'm about to get ready for the trick or treaters. They're about to come over in a bit. So yeah, it's evening over here. I haven't really got much more to add on to apart from what I'd already said about the whole argument about working with people who are of opposition to you, because it just seems that every example I've seen of this, like, it doesn't produce anything. So what's the point? Like, there was I think one of the Nation of Islam guys said that they sat down with the KKK once and they came to the conclusion that they should be separate from each other. And I'm like, well, didn't you already know that before you went over there? Like, I don't.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because the Nation of Islam did. There was a period where they tried to work with the Ku Klux Klan in the South, particularly in Georgia, and it actually, and what ended up happening was the Ku Klux Klan was able to just get a lot of money out of them, and they didn't actually accomplish anything. So let me cover this real quick when we go back to the Compromise of 1877. So these are some of the core tenets of the Compromise of 1877: the removal of all remaining U.S. military forces from the former Confederate states, the appointment of at least one Southern Democrat to Hayes' cabinet, Rutherford B. Hayes. David M. Key of Tennessee was appointed as Postmaster General. The construction of another transcontinental railroad using the Texas Pacific in the South. This had been part of the Scott Plan proposed by Thomas A. Scott of the Pennsylvania Railroad. He had initiated negotiations resulting in the final compromise. Legislation to help industrialize the South and restore its economy following the Civil War and Reconstruction. To right to deal with Black people without Northern interference. So those were the aspects of the Compromise of 1877.
When they use the term reconstruction, what do they mean? What are they reconstructing?
Yeah, so Reconstruction was the period after the Civil War in which African Americans were able to gain significant civil rights, right? So they were able to vote, they were able to serve in Congress, in the House, the Senate. They were able to become mayors and city congresspersons, so on and so forth, city commissioners. After the Compromise of 1877, all that went by the wayside.
Oh, right. So they only had that small window from 1865 to 1870.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And this picture that you see here is a picture of a Atlanta race riot where white people in Atlanta, this I believe in 1908, 1909, just attacked Black people with impunity for literally no reason whatsoever and just killed them.
Because they're seeing it as we now have to compete with these people, where before we could have got everything up for ourselves and not have to pay them a thing.
Correct.
Okay, right. So
and that's when that movie Birth of a Nation was created, right? As a way to actually,
dehumanize them or just
African people here in America for having rights, right?
Okay. So when it comes to slavery and the argument for reparations, and this is one of the things that you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, and please do, right? The institutes that were fostering or owning or controlling the system or the process of slavery, ultimately those were independent commercial private citizens doing their business, right? It wasn't necessarily a government initiative, was it? Or was it?
Well, yeah. Well, actually, yes. So it was a both and, right? Slavery was legalized, codified, and subsidized by the state.
Right. Okay. So it's run by private individuals, but the state are enforcing it with laws and
correct.
and stuff that keep it entrenched.
Absolutely. So, like, we had black codes on the book.
Right.
After the Stono Rebellion in 1739 in Stono, South Carolina, there were laws put in the book prohibiting black people from being able to read, right? Prohibiting black people from being able to gather alone, prohibiting black people from owning firearms. There were laws put in the book that actually we talk about subsidizing the institution of chattel enslavement, enslavement of African people, in which there was actual taxpayer money allocated to have a standing militias to put guard against slave insurrections, right? The Second Amendment was created. And I actually have the book by Carol Anderson, the second. Carol Anderson, she wrote a book titled The Second that highlights the Second Amendment was created as a way to arm white men to prevent slave insurrection, slave revolts, right? So we're talking about legalized, codified, and of course, subsidized by the state. So it wasn't just something, because most people try to say, oh, well, the state.
Do you know? Do you know? This all made me wonder. Do you know whether or not those plantation owners in the South were forced to pay federal taxes for the labor?
Yeah,
for the
I
free
don't know
labor
that. I don't know that, but I do know that many individuals who owned plantations and owned slaves were they were governors. They were part of the governmental apparatus.
Okay, so they were making money hand over foot and not paying any federal taxes.
And they also played a role in creating the laws that legalized what they were doing.
So this helps.
So that's another reason why the Civil War started, because they're sitting there making a ton of money, and they're not even adding to the country in general. They're not even paying federal taxes. They might pay federal taxes for like the sale of the produce that the plantation produces, but they're not paying any taxes.
We don't want to speculate because we don't know if that's actually the case or not. But a good example would be Thomas Jefferson, right? Former president. He owned a assortment of slaves. In fact, we know Thomas Jefferson is infamous for, of course, his sexual assault of Sally Hemings, who he began sexually assaulting when he was 45 years old and she was only 14 on a trip to Paris.
Okay, so when people are making the argument for reparations and they are going for the government, I now have a better understanding of why they're going for the government. Because before, I used to just say to myself, why are we not going after these private citizens or these industries that actually ran it? Because they're the ones that are responsible. Because if you're going to be taking this through some legal process, you have to have someone to bring your claim or your lawsuit against. But it just seems that we always seem to go after these governments who change every few years or whatnot, and it just seems like we're going after targets that are just not really the right target. But understanding it from the American perspective, as you just laid out, as to how it was entrenched by the law and stuff, I do now understand why we're doing it. But then again, from my understanding, each state over there is different, isn't it? So
but beyond that, the Constitution, right, was a pro-slavery document. This is something that Frederick Douglass even highlighted, and he was integration. The Constitution was a pro-slavery document, and the Constitution to this day still states that African Americans are 3/5 of a human being.
Flipping hell.
Yeah, so we're talking about at the federal level. It was legalized.
It was amended though, right?
No, that's still in there. That was not amended. Absolutely not.
But
so you saying my vote isn't worth like one full vote?
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the Constitution still states that African Americans are 3/5 of a human being.
Okay.
It had to be amended. It had to be amended.
That hasn't been amended, or it has? No.
Now, there have been other amendments added to the Constitution to theoretically give African American citizenship. We talk about the 15th Amendment, right? We could talk about Civil Rights Act of 1964, 1965, but that is still part of the Constitution that says that African Americans are 3/5 of a human being.
Well, I believe in a legal document, you can't remove it. Anything that was put in the legal document, you have to amend it by adding to that legal document.
Right.
Yeah. So they can't remove it.
So by them having that on there, what does that do in practice in
Well,
2020?
yeah, doing antebellum America, and by antebellum, of course, we mean pre-war America. Um, there were numerous individuals who were signers of the Constitution who were slave owners, right? And part of the issue had to deal with, how it had to do with it had to do with paying taxes. It had to do with electoral votes, right? It had to deal with votes in the electoral college, right? And the number of state representatives a state would get. And so they came to the compromise of 1789. Yeah, the compromise. Matter of fact, let me see if I can look this up, because I actually have this in one of my PowerPoints. It might be like week 7, week 6, or something like that. The compromise of 1789, where they came to that conclusion. I'm trying to look and see here. So no, it might be week 8, because I'm looking at week 9 now, where I could actually give you all the right week 8. All right, here we go. Yep. Good night. Good night. No, I don't have the details there, but I just talk about the compromise of 1789, 3/5 compromise. So, yeah, but that took place 1787. I'm sorry, 1787.
So there's no way to get that changed, or to get it deleted or taken out of the Constitution.
Well, I mean, what they just simply did was they just added amendments to the Constitution, and of course, we're talking about the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments. 13th Amendment, of course, made slavery illegal unless used as punishment for a crime. The 14th Amendment, of course, made it illegal to discriminate based on race. And then, if I remember, the 14th Amendment is what gave African American citizenship. Then the 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote.
Right. So
theoretically, but
so for all intensive purposes, it's redundant now, right? That 3/5 of the human is
right.
Right. Okay. Oh,
yeah.
right.
So the idea is, if you're a felon, then you can't vote, and if you have like a large percentage of African Americans in the United States who have a felony, then you just took 3/5 of their voting power away.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So they've really thought about this whole system, haven't they? Like, in terms of what they can do to try and hold people back and try and keep themselves in a pole position.
Right.
And I don't know, because earlier LMA was on, and he was saying that, from his perspective, the fight is still to be had in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna disagree with him if that's what he thinks, but so I can't help but think, then what are you fighting for if that's what the foundation is, and they're not listening to constructive people when they're trying to have these conversations to genuinely move things forward. They want to talk over you, they want to give you things they think you need rather than the things you actually need, and it just doesn't seem to be an environment that is based on helping the majority to just prosper. And I just think, well, what is the battle on that front then? Like, what's the tangible that you're going to get out? Like, it seems like a waste of energy to me. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, it's like it's you take that you're saying negotiating with a white nationalist is a waste of time, because they're just not going to really see your point of view, and they're just going to try to take advantage of you.
Yeah, exactly. And not even just
so
that.
The thing is it's like anytime you're dealing with two entities in their negotiations, you got to come to some type of agreement where both parties are happy. So you can, and each party is always going to fight to be on top of that negotiation. So of course they're going to lowball you, and you highball you, and then you highball them, and then you're supposed to meet in the middle somewhere. So it's just, that's why like lawyers are so important
But this is a situation. But hold on, real quick. But Sam, and this is the situation in which their word isn't worth
anything.
Yeah, you can have all the lawyers in the world. Their word isn't worth anything because they don't believe that your existence is meaningful in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, because that's only going that kind of negotiation is only going to work when both parties see that there is something to gain from working together. But these people that are adamantly opposed to your empowerment, they're never going to meet in good faith.
They don't even think that you're a human being.
And this is one of the things that I think we as Black people need to get better at doing, is just really looking at things that are a productive use of time and things that are a waste of time, and just stop. We ain't got time to be focused on things that aren't producing anything, or things that are not of constructive, beneficial value. Like I said, the example I used earlier, Nation of Islam should have known that sitting down with the Ku Klux Klan, you're going to agree to separate. So what does that mean? That 100 of us have to travel to some backward town to talk to these people? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what else could they have been doing in that time that would have been of constructive value? And I just wonder what it is that we need to do to just get our minds focused on this mission. Because, like I said,
if you don't have like a military to enforce your agreement, then of course the other party can renege it at any time. And if they take away your right to own a weapon, then how can you enforce any agreement?
Yeah. I don't know. I think, just like I said the other day in the other stream, like, we got to find some ways of getting some W's on the board. And the way we need to do that is we just need to really just be thinking about what tangible benefit are we working toward, and what sort of core tenets of whatever code it is we need to just get on board with, and just start doing whatever we can do wherever we are. Because it just seems like these guys are just running around doing all this extra stuff that's not leading anywhere, instead of focusing on the actual things that we need. But I don't know, maybe it needs more expertise than I can think of right now. But I don't know. So this person on tonight's show, Celia Jane Allen, what else did she go on to do? Did she actually achieve anything? Did she build anything? Like,
she was a recruiter, and of course organizer for the peace movement Ethiopia. And so that is her claim to fame as a Pan-Africanist. She was a member of the peace movement Ethiopia, and she was an ardent and dedicated recruiter and organizer for the organization. And
does that organization exist today?
It doesn't exist today, no. Okay. But of course, this organization was a derivative of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. The Peace Movement Ethiopia was created by Mitty Maud Gordon, who was a member of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. And the Peace Movement Ethiopia was created in the 1930s and existed in the 1930s and 40s, and they were headquartered in Chicago, Illinois.
Is there any information on why they chose Ethiopia over any other place?
Well, no, their goal was to actually migrate to Liberia, but that was just the name of the organization.
Okay, all right. Yeah. All right.
So yeah, Celia Jane Allen, little known Pan-Africanist, but once again, family, we're going to be going through a number, of course, Pan-Africanists. This simply is, we're going in alphabetical order. So this may last well into next year, as I think we probably have at least 75 actual lives in this series, where we're going to be honoring the life, legacies, and work of different Pan-Africanists, and of course, looking to extrapolate from their work what we can do today to make the world better for African people.
And just on the question of Liberia, are there any like sort of strong connections with the Black USA community and the people in Liberia today, or is that a connection that's been lost as well?
I couldn't speak to that. You know, once again, that's not my wheelhouse, so I couldn't make that. I couldn't make that claim, yay or nay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, because I don't want to misspeak and be putting out misinformation. So,
All right, fair enough.
but I do know that due to the American Colonization Society, there was a large segment of African Americans who did repatriate to Liberia.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Absolutely. So definitely, family, I appreciate you all tapping in.
Who's the next person that you're going to look at?
Yes, so let's look here. The next person that we have coming up is, drum roll please, right? It is oh yes. Let's see here. Deuce Muhammad Ali.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes, Deuce Muhammad Ali. And of course, we know that Marcus Garvey was an apprentice of his at one point in his early life. So, yes, Deuce Muhammad Ali will be the next Pan Africanist that we, of course, will cover in our Pan African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future.
All right. Okay. Thanks. I've got to go now, but
No problem.
Conversation. And,
No
and
problem.
I really enjoyed talking to your cousin the other night. He was a really good guy, man.
Yeah, yes, that's my cousin. I'm about 18 months older than him. Yeah, 18.
All right, okay.
Yeah, so we were
Cool.
really close, of course, when we were kids, because we would be at each other's houses all the time. But I appreciate everyone for tapping in. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Peace.
Cool.
Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on Black. Peace.